Hello everyone, Kristy-Lee here and welcome to episode number 29 of How to HR. I do hope you're well and having a fabulous week. Those of you currently in lockdown, I hope you're doing okay despite the restrictions on your movement and your business operations. I know it's a tricky time if that's you going through that, especially if you're homeschooling as well at the same time. That's an extra challenge that some of us are dealing with as well. But I do hope you are doing great and having a wonderful week. On this week's episode of How to HR, which is our weekly video series, you will catch it each and every Thursday here inside our Facebook group, HR Support for Australian Businesses, as well as on our Facebook page and over on our YouTube channel. And we always bring you a tip, a strategy, a piece of gold that you can take and use within your business. And today I'm sharing with you the 6 key reasons you might have an employee underperforming, because once you know where the underperformance issue is coming from, it's so much easier to figure out how to take the next step and fix it. So today's episode is all about how to figure out where your underperformance issue is coming from. And I get asked a lot, one of the key things that people, seek my advice on is having trouble with a staff member. And often it's a performance issue. It's often they're not doing what we expect from them. They're not performing at the level we expected. They're not getting through the work. They're just being difficult. We can't quite put our finger on it, but they're not being the best employee. All of these things are performance issues. And managing performance is, I'm not going to pretend it's easy. It is hard work, and you want to put things in place so you don't get to this point. But when you do, failing to act is a real problem, and it will not get better on its own. I do definitely say do not turn a blind eye to a performance issue, because it's not going to get any better. And in fact, it's most likely going to get worse if the issue is not addressed. So putting your head in the sand is not the answer when it comes to performance issues, as much as that might be a way more comfortable scenario than actually having the conversations you need to have and putting in place the improvement plans you might need to. Sticking your head in your sand is not a better option. So really, when it comes down to it, there are a gazillion ways that someone could be underperforming, but I've distilled it down to the 6 key areas for you, because almost every underperformance issue I have come across in the last 20 years comes from one of these 6 key problems. I'm going to tell you at the outset, not all these problems are the fault of the underperforming employee. In fact, quite often they are our fault as the leader or the manager of the team by not setting the employee up for success. So not all of this is about just coming down hard on the underperforming employee. We also need to look at ourselves as the leader and make sure we're doing the right things to set the employee up for high performance, to set them up for success in their role. So let's look at these 6 key things to help you figure out how you can tell which one or which group really apply to your current underperforming employee. Now, the first reason an employee might be underperforming, first area, is clarity. We haven't been clear about what it is we expect from them. Now, I know many of you are going to say, oh, of course I was clear, but were you really? And when I'm talking clear, I mean ridiculously, simply clear. As much as we would like them to be, our employees are not mind readers. So giving them a half-baked instruction or expecting them to just know what to do next, or what's expected, or what volume you expected, or what exact result you were looking for is not good enough. You need to be pedantically clear about what you expect in order for your employee to be able to perform at that level. Now, taking a step back here as well, you need to be clear yourself about what you're expecting from the employee. And this is often where we actually come undone. We've communicated our instructions and our direction and our results that we're seeking as clearly as we can to our employees, but those results, those objectives are not clear in our head. And when we're not clear ourselves on what we're looking for the employee to achieve, even the best communicator is not going to articulately, didn't get that word out very well, articulately and clearly give those employees the right direction. So the first reason you're going to have an underperformance issue is that you haven't been clear about what it is you expect the employee to get done. This could be about deadlines, timeframes, volume. It could be about how you're going to measure success. What actually do you want the results to look like? If you're not clear on that in your own mind, and therefore you do not clearly articulate that to your employee, they're going to underperform because they don't know what you expect, what you expect from them. Just remember, our employees want only a few fundamental things from us at the very base level. What do we expect from them? How are they going about those against those expectations, and what does the future hold? So number one, we haven't been clear. Number two, we have been clear, but there's been some kind of misunderstanding or misinterpretation. So we've been quite clear, we've given the direction, but somewhere along the lines, there's been a misinterpretation or a misunderstanding about that direction. Now, this has not been an intentional thing on the employee or your part, but somewhere along the way, whether it's been through Chinese whispers, things going through too many sets of hands and the end information didn't reach the person correctly, or whether they have just genuinely misunderstood, because it can happen, even when we've been really clear, just because they're listening to the information from their frame of mind, not from our frame of mind. The same words can be spoken, but especially if there's any room for interpretation around those words in that direction, there is definitely room for misunderstanding. Now, when that happens, the employee is going along thinking they're doing exactly what you've asked them to do and diligently working in that fashion, but the results don't equal what you're looking for. So always check that there hasn't been a misunderstanding. Now, this can be as simple as asking the employee to repeat back the direction. This can be as simple as asking the employee to tell you what the key objectives are for the week, or what our goals or our targets are. So you know that they've understood exactly what our direction is and what we need from them. So that's the second reason. There's been some kind of lost in translation situation with the instructions that we've given. Number three, this is a tricky one. We don't have realistic expectations. Here's a newsflash. You can go out to try and find an employee that's exactly like you. They do not exist. Expecting your employee to be a clone of you is a surefire way to set yourself up for a disastrous employment relationship, because it's simply not possible. First and foremost, it's not their business. So they're not going to treat this with the same level of energy, enthusiasm, and overcommitment that you will as your business. Secondly, we are each snowflakes. We've got our own, even if we're quite similar in personality, we have our own nuances. So unrealistic expectations are a huge one. I quote a song from the Gym Blossoms from, I want to say, early 90s, probably. And there's a line in that song that has stuck with me forevermore. I've done a podcast episode just about this entire song. The song's called Hey Jealousy. Hope you've all got it in your heads now. The line goes, if you don't expect too much from me, you might not be let down. The problem is, when we have unrealistic expectations on our team, we feel let down. We therefore think the employee is underperforming. But we have not set them up for success if we have not set realistic expectations. You see this often where a company will try and merge two completely not aligned skill sets into one role and expect to find a unicorn to do those things. That's an unrealistic expectation. We see unrealistic expectations when it comes to how much volume or output someone's going to be able to achieve. I see unrealistic expectations a lot when it comes to businesses that rely on billable hours and are looking for their employees to achieve a certain percentage of their time as billable hours. If they don't have the systems and processes set up to support the employee to do that, because they have to take an hour to do a report, which is non-billable, after every client consult or something like that. You can't set those expectations if you don't have the support mechanisms in place in your business to allow the employee to achieve it. There are a million different ways that we set unrealistic expectations, but this is a biggie, because we feel let down, we feel like they're underperforming, but in fact, no one will be able to reach that performance level because the expectation is off kilter. That can be a hard one for us to acknowledge and swallow. I've been there, but honestly, it is a huge one. Now, I'm not saying you should set the bar low at all, but I do think you have to be mindful of what is a realistic expectation. Then, of course, push a little beyond, absolutely. But don't set unrealistic expectations. No one wins in that scenario. The fourth reason you might have a performance issue, yes, Yeah, I've got, yes, that's right. The fourth one is that you don't have sufficient measurement strategies in place. So you actually don't know what the employee is achieving or delivering every day, every week, every month, because you haven't set strong measurement strategies. So we see this when it comes to vague KPIs. We see this when it comes to no KPIs at all. We see this when it comes to not really having a clear understanding what the role involves from our leadership perspective, and also from not really understanding how long it takes to do certain things or what the different nuances are of how that might interact with other things in the business. So having insufficient measurements in place is a real problem, because not only do we feel like the employee's underperforming, but we actually can't put our finger on how they're underperforming. And that's something that's pretty common. Many of you may have felt that before, that I know they're not quite where I need them to be, but I can't put my finger on how to fix it. It's because you don't have the right measurement strategies in place. So this is where you want to get really clear on your KPIs, where you want to set realistic but also very structured and measurable KPIs, where you want to set KPIs around output and performance, and also values and cultural fit, how we do things around here kind of KPIs. So KPIs are your best friend when it comes to being able to manage that type of underperformance. The fifth type, this is coming back to the employee now. The employee is not skilled for the role that they are in. Either you've hired the wrong person that doesn't have the skill set for the role, or more commonly, over time, the role has changed and the employee's skill set has not kept up with that change, either because you haven't trained them or they haven't invested in training themselves. It can happen for a whole lot of reasons. But at the present moment, they do not have the skill set required for the position that they are employed to do. We are going to see this more commonly in the workplace in the coming 5 to 10 years. A recent survey out of, I'm trying to think which university, I can't off the top of my head, an Australian university, Swinburne, I think, in Melbourne, showed us, they took data, they did surveys of hundreds or thousands of employees across all different sectors, and the vast majority, something like 75%, feel that they will not have the skills to retain their position in the workforce in the next 5 years. They can see that roles and technology and everything else that goes with that are changing at a rate that their skill set is not keeping up with. The employees are acknowledging this, yet us as employers are not doing enough to bridge that gap. So that's going to be an issue definitely moving forward. And I've seen this time and time again in businesses. When you've got an employee that's perhaps been with you for a long time, maybe 10, 15, even 20 years. And once they were very strong in their role, but times have changed, technology's changed, processes have changed. Things are going to continue to change at a more and more rapid rate. If they haven't kept up, they may currently be not skilled for the role you've got them in. Now, you've got a few options if you've got that issue. It can be a skill development issue, or it can be an issue as to whether that employee is best suited for that role. But how can you fix that skill gap if you've identified that the key fundamental performance issue is they don't have the skill set you need them to have? And the final reason that you're going to have an underperforming employee is that you have an engagement issue. You've got a disengaged employee. Disengaged employees are those ones that are like walking zombies in the workplace. They turn up, they're there on time, they do, well, sometimes they're late, but they are there in the workplace, but they are not actively participating in their role with any sense of commitment, energy, enthusiasm, drive, any of that. So they're underperforming because their engagement has dropped. Now, disengaged employees are dangerous in the workplace. They can very easily become toxic. And if you've ever had a toxic employee in your workplace, you'll know you do not want that again. But disengagement also really has a huge impact on the rest of your team. So studies show us it takes about 4 highly engaged employees to offset the negative impact of one disengaged employee. So that's one side of it. Disengaged employees also drag down productivity and ultimately profitability in business. So if you've got an engagement issue, get on it quickly. It is absolutely possible to re-engage a disengaged employee, particularly if they're just slipping into disengagement. And this is where, as I said earlier, do not leave underperformance unspoken about. Don't stick your head in the sand. Deal with it as soon as you identify it. Case in point is your disengaged employee. If you can catch them early enough, you can re-engage them. And there's all different reasons they may be disengaged. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but it's understanding why they're disengaged. Perhaps they lack challenge. Perhaps there's something going on at home personally. Perhaps they're bored in their role. Perhaps they're dissatisfied with something in the workplace. There's a lack of communication. It can be a whole range of reasons. Figuring it out, putting some strategies in place to re-engage them will absolutely lift performance. They're going to go from underperformer to superstar in no time at all if you can fix that engagement piece. So whilst, yes, there are a myriad of reasons you're going to have people underperforming the workplace, these 6 areas, in my experience, are the key 6 areas that cause underperformance. And once you know why you are where you are, then of course you have the skills, knowledge, and tools to go ahead and fix it. So let's recap. Why is my employee underperforming? How to tell which reason we're talking about. Number 1, we have not been clear. We have not clearly articulated to our employee what we expect from them, and therefore they of course are underperforming because they don't know what we want from them. Number 2, our directions have been misunderstood or misinterpreted. Somewhere along the line, something's been lost in translation. We need to go back and remedy that so that they're clear. We have set unrealistic expectations. We've expected too much from them and we've been let down. We don't have sufficient measurement metrics in place. We don't have clear KPIs. We don't have clear goals and objectives. We don't have any clear way to measure performance. And therefore, we actually don't know what underperformance or overperformance looks like. The employee in the role is not skilled for the role that they are in. Either they were the wrong hire for the role, or over time, their skill set has not grown with the role and they are currently not skilled for the role. Or you have an engagement issue and you've got a disengaged employee in the role, which will ultimately result in absolute performance issues. Now, once you've identified where the crux of the issue, where the core problem comes from with underperformance, you can then go about fixing it, whether it's about giving clearer directions, whether it's about making sure directions are interpreted correctly, whether it's about setting more realistic expectations, putting in place solid KPIs for every position in your business, making sure that you can upskill an employee if we've got a skills gap, and fixing engagement issues by putting in place engagement strategies. I really hope that helps. I know underperformance is such a headache. In fact, listening to a podcast earlier this week, they were sharing stats that an average business owner spends 1 day a week managing underperformance. I don't know about you, I don't have time for that. So if you can fix the issues, you can avoid them in the beginning even better. You'll have a much more productive and profitable team, and you'll have far more time on your hands because you're not handling performance headaches. I really hope that's helped. Thank you so much for joining me here on this week's How to HR. I'll be back again next week for another episode. And if at any time you're watching these How to HRs and you've got feedback or you'd like to write a comment, please do so, even if you're catching the replay. And if there's a topic you would love me to cover in a future How to HR, pop it under here as well, and I'll be really happy to do that for you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. I'll be back next Thursday for our next episode of How to HR. Take care.